Siyo from the Res. I'm Kinley.
And I'm Colton.
This is the debut of Cherokee Nation's official podcast, Siyo from the Res.
Each episode will be talking with Cherokee citizens who are working hard to preserve and revitalize our culture and who are making a difference in our communities.
If you're just tuning in and don't know anything about the Cherokee Nation, we're the largest tribe in the United States with over 460,000 citizens.
We're recording from our tribal headquarters right here in Tahlequah, Oklahoma.
Colton and I were born and raised here on the reservation.
We've both worked for the nation for several years now and gotten a chance to meet a lot of our citizens, and we know there are a lot of extraordinary Cherokee people out there who have interesting stories to tell and experiences to share.
And we're so excited to kick off our very first episode.
Our first guest is renowned Cherokee artist and Cherokee National Treasure, whose work has been featured by the Smithsonian Institution, Marvel Comics, and across the Cherokee Nation Reservation and beyond. Welcome, Roy Boney. How are you doing today, Roy?
Doing well this morning.
You split your time between all of our different sites. Is it feel good to be back in Tahlequah once in a while?
Yeah, Tahlequah is kind of the home base, but they send me out regionally in the 14 counties of different places and working with different Cherokee speakers from time to time.
Awesome. And if I'm not mistaken, reading this morning, you're originally a Mays County boy, is that correct?
Yeah, I grew up in Locust Grove.
Awesome. And can you kind of tell me, a little bit about your upbringing, maybe how you became the multidisciplinarian you are, what your early influences and things growing up early in the reservation that inspired you to be who you are today?
Yeah, so I grew up in a small community called Iron Post, just south of Locust Grove. And there's a lot of Cherokees down there, a lot of Cherokee families. And so I grew up in this area just surrounded by a lot of them are gone now, but these culture bearers, essentially, as speakers and artists and things like Bill Glass Jr. lives down that road I grew up on. So just seeing this community, I took it for granted as a kid, obviously, but the older I got, I was like, wow, this is a really unique place to live with all these people here. So at school, I was always doodling, sketching and stuff, getting in trouble for it sometimes, that kind of thing, but I had very good art teachers who encouraged me to keep doing this, and one teacher in particular, his name is Jim Sinclair. He lives here in Tahlequah, actually, but he taught at Locust Grove. He encouraged me to pursue art, and he was my art teacher from, I think, 5th grade through 12th grade, and he actually helped me when the time came to apply for college and all this, so he was a big influence. He would bring me samples of native art. He was always encouraging me to say, there are very successful people out there doing this kind of thing, so you should give it a shot sometime. And as a kid, I wasn't too interested in native art per se, because a lot of it that I'd seen had been kind of a lot of stereotypical kind of images and that kind of thing. But I mentioned Bill Glass. He was one of the first native artists, Cherokee artists, that I remember kind of seeing prominently out there, because he was from my hometown. He was doing very interesting, innovative ceramic art and sculptural art, and it was getting out there and getting put in these prominent places. And of course, there was Bill Rabbit, who lives from Pryor, not too far from Locust Grove, and I would see his art, and we'd go to Pryor a lot for random business with my parents and stuff, and you'd see he had that on the studio, that big mural of his on the wall out there in Pryor. So seeing these kind of influences of Cherokee art out there would just kind of encourage me to think, like, maybe I can do that too someday.
Yeah, I was thinking about that on the way in. I grew up in Pryor. Tracy Rabbit's a family friend, and just thinking about kind of that little hub of Mays County, I was thinking, the glasses pop up, the rabbits pop up. When you're thinking about Mays County art, is there something other than being a highly Cherokee place that makes that area so special that it's creating legends such as Roy Boney Jr. himself?
I think part of it is its location. It's not too far from Tulsa, and it's not too far from Northwest Arkansas, and so you have this convergence of these very lively places with a lot going on there, like culturally, not just like for Cherokee culture, but just in general. A lot of things come through. A lot of art shows are accessible locally, kind of close. Like if you want to go to like the Gilcrease or Philbrook or something, there's these world-class museums in the area. And even in recent years, there's the Crystal Bridges Museum, not too far away, really, for a good day trip. So these influences, I think, they were coming into the area a lot stronger than they used to be, and it's kind of helping people see there's a larger world out there.
I think that's amazing. I mean, I grew up in an artist family. Did your parents also do art too? Did you draw any inspiration from them?
Yeah, my dad was a pretty good artist. My uncle Lloyd Boney was a good artist, and I have a cousin named Brooks Henson who's a good painter. And so Brooks lived down the road from me as well. My dad and my uncle didn't pursue it as like a profession or anything. They would just kind of sketch and doodle around. But I always saw that, and my uncle Lloyd, when he was younger, used to draw comics and things too. So my dad would talk about that. I said, "Well, my brother used to do this. He'd do the flip books and things."
Wow.
And so, yeah, that does run in the family. And like I said, my cousin Brooks, he's a fairly well-known Cherokee painter. He was doing that as long as I can remember. And so as a kid, he would always be getting ready for art shows, or my family would be talking about, say, well, Brooks is going here. He's going to Santa Fe. He's going to go do this thing. And so I seen that influence as well was, again, as a kid, you take that stuff for granted. But as I get older, I realized, wow, that stuff was just all around me. So I was privileged to have that background there with me.
Right. That's amazing because I think that really helps you, hone in on those skills.
I was just going to kind of ask, I feel like people know you in two camps. They know you as language preservationist, warrior, technologist Roy Boney, or they know you as artist Roy Boney. What do you see as coming first? Kind of a chicken or egg debate, but like, were you speaker first or were you an artist first?
I see myself, honestly, as an artist first, just because it's something that I've been doing as long as I can remember. There's never been a time when I can't remember not drawing or sketching or doing something. I came to the language fight later. And what spurred that was, as I mentioned earlier, I grew up in this area with all these Cherokee speakers. My dad had a lot of Cherokee language items in the house. Growing up, of course, the Cherokee New Testament. He had a bunch of history books that had like some samples of the Cherokee Phoenix in it from the historical Phoenix and things like that. He was always sitting around teaching himself how to read and write syllabary. So I was used to seeing that. I didn't realize how unique that was. He spoke to me in Cherokee. My mom wasn't fluent, but she knew enough to get by. So just being in that environment helped out a lot. And the older I got, a lot of these people started passing away. And you start realizing there's this loss that's happening and how is it impacting you. And initially, at least for me, I took it for granted that, like, oh, I got X amount of speakers in my family. I can go ask them this question and things like that. And so as they started fading out, you start feeling that safety blanket. It's not as safe anymore. The threads are starting to come loose. Myself, I didn't grow up fluent. I'm still learning. So when I was in college as an undergraduate, I was studying graphic design, and that got me into typography. And so that led to my artistic interest kind of did lead into the language aspect. But what led into the technology aspect was when I tried to make these Cherokee fonts initially, the computer operating systems didn't support Cherokee. So these fonts were basically English fonts at their core, but they were layered with Cherokee on top of it. So if you wanted to type in Cherokee, you still had to kind of use this English system base. And when I started trying to get into animation and things like that, if you wanted to use the syllabary in the animation, it still wasn't working quite right with the software. So that's kind of what spurred this pursuit of trying to get the Cherokee language to work in all these technological areas. And when I was doing that work initially, I was working for a nonprofit called the American Indian Resource Center here in Tahlequah. And my boss at the time, Watheen Young, she helped encourage this movement, and she's the one that encouraged me to go to grad school and all this. So I met Dr. Morton, who used to be the education director for Cherokee Nation around this time, and he was like, "You're doing interesting work. How about coming to work for Cherokee Nation?" I never thought about doing that, but that's kind of what opened the door to me coming in here and doing this stuff with the language department.
It seems recently these tech companies like Apple and Google are really pushing, and Amazon are pushing for Native representation and using their technology to kind of farther our mission. So it's interesting to hear somebody at the ground level of that using their culture and technology to kind of bring everybody together, because it seems like such a revolutionary idea, but I'm sure it's been going on for years and years. I know you're a humble guy and you won't give yourself credit for that.
Yeah, I was going to also ask about, for those that don't know, that are listeners, what does our language department do? And have you seen it grow and evolve over the years that you've been here?
When I first started working with some of the language people from the tribe, it was over 20 years ago when I was still at the nonprofit group. I used to go to the old jailhouse downtown. That's where the language office was. So I used to joke, still joke with some of the people there the translators say, I met them in jail, like Dennis Six Killer and Anna Six Killer and Sammy Still and all the Ed Fields, they all were in that little jailhouse. And I would go there and sit with them and record them because at the time we were trying to develop a interactive CD-ROM, which is, sounds kind of funny now, trying to make that, but where you could point and click on the computer and they would say things in Cherokee, that kind of stuff. And that's kind of what got me into that little crew there, is working with them with that. So they go from being housed to this little jailhouse, literal jailhouse, to this state-of-the-art, whatever the square footage is, like 16,000 square foot, wherever it is now, the Durban Filling Center. It's this huge growth. And, Durban was in that jailhouse sometimes, too. I remember at the time he was often out doing research, like in California and things like that, but he was still part of that even at that point. So I got to kind of witness this growth from, the small group doing, even then, they were still doing translations. The Cherokee Language Consortium kind of had its beginnings there, too. As years went, similar, like I was saying earlier, a lot of people in the community start realizing that safety net of language speakers that we had was dwindling. And if we didn't do anything about it, if we didn't try to do this big turnaround, we would have lost it really a lot sooner. Fortunately, when the tribe started seeing that need, we started getting more support. And then as it kept growing, we started getting into these realms of technology. And with the immersion school, that was a big part of it. The kids at the time needed some technology in their language, and they didn't have it. So all these needs were, fortunately, we had the support of Cherokee Nation in the community to kind of pursue these avenues. And as it kept going, just kind of like a snowball, it kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger with everyone coming in. The more people would start getting hired as staff. And eventually we had to get a new building because there wasn't enough room here in the complex to house all the language programs. So it's been quite amazing to watch it grow. There's still a big need to keep this going, but I think we've made pretty good progress in the last 20 years.
You said you kind of shied away from native art at the beginning. At what point did the Cherokee art and the comics cross over?
Yeah, I did grow up reading a lot of comics, heavily into that. I was a big comic book collector for the longest time until I ended up going to college. Didn't have time or money to do that anymore. But when I was an undergraduate, I was learning how to do a lot of web HTML work and that kind of stuff. Because studying design, I wanted to get into web design and stuff initially, but it kind of led to this idea of doing web comics. So I started doing these web comics. I learned how to do automatic updating and stuff. So I'd just upload all these images to a server, and then they would, on a certain date, they would post and that kind of thing. I started gaining a small following at the time. And so initially I was doing just this kind of gag comic, kind of funny stuff, and started realizing people kind of did enjoy some of that humor. It was called the Smoking Pony, and it was this horse that was just kind of this absurdist horse that made kind of dumb statements and things. But some of it, I started injecting some Cherokee references and humor in it, and people were like, "What is it? This is kind of interesting. This is something different." And that kind of made a light bulb come on. It's like, well, people are interested in this out there. Maybe I could put something out. So I started trying to collaborate with different people at college. It's like, let's make a comic, because comics are very collaborative. Nothing ever really got off the ground. But at one point, there was this follower I had that was in Canada. He saw some online comics, and he sent me an email randomly and said, "Hey, would you like to collaborate on this project I have?" He was a writer. His name was Matt Shepard. He's not native, but he wrote this. He had this idea for a story about zombies. Instead of them being monsters, they come back and they still retain their thoughts and memories as who they were before. So it became a story about civil rights. So these zombies are fighting for their rights to be recognized as people. And so, of course, that's a big metaphor for a lot of different things. And so that kind of, again, spurred some more ideas in my head about, well, how can I start tying these stories of Native, particularly Cherokee fights and things in our history into art? So we did this comic. It came out. It's called Dead Eyes Open. This graphic novel, a couple hundred pages. Has some small success with it. Around this time as well, I ended up going to grad school, And in grad school, I was learning a lot about Cherokee history because I got a fellowship at the University of Arkansas in Little Rock at the Sequoia Research Center to study the Cherokee documents they had in their collection. So I was reading through all this microfilm and learning about the removal particularly. I seen all that dark history and all the firsthand accounts from all the existing letters and things. And that's when I learned quite a lot about Andrew Jackson's, participation in this history. And that's kind of what put me on this path of Native art, I guess, on a serious level. Was in this history, I was studying art and I wanted to do something about this, make a piece about it. And a gentleman named Bill Wiggins at the university there, he's an art collector. He donated a lot of his art to the Sequoia Research Center. So he's always there making sure they were taking care of his art properly. And he struck up a friendship with me. He encouraged me to enter the Chollatiers show here in Tahlequah. I had never done that at the time, and he said, you should submit something, so I did, and I submitted a drawing of Andrew Jackson as like this soulless kind of monster. His eyes are black, and it's kind of almost bloody looking with the ink and things, and I was really surprised to find out it got Best of Show that year when I entered, and that particular piece has that style too of the comic book kind of look, kind of art. It was tied to zombies because I was working on a zombie comic at the time too, and all this, so it all kind of converged, and that's really what kind of put me on this path that I still am on right now, kind of trying to tell our stories through visual art.
I've seen that painting and I really like it. Like, I don't know if have you seen it?
Yeah, it was featured in the art walk downtown, correct?
I really like that.
Yeah, and I feel like a painting like that, we see the fun stuff, we see the superheroes, and we see the animals with pipes and gorgets, But once I saw the Andrew Jackson, I was like, wow, this is how powerful, even in that comic book style, the social commentary is and can be, and the historical relevance of something like that.
Yeah, and that's what Cherokees are. They have a sense of humor. I feel like all Cherokees do. So I feel like whenever you do some like paintings or drawings or sketches, do you draw from like sense of humor? I'm sure you do because I've seen your art and it's great. But how do you draw from your sense of humor?
I do this thing, a sketch a day. It's back in 2012 when I started doing that. And the idea behind that was one of the New Year's resolutions. Like, I'm going to do art every day for a month. And just as practice to kind of get better because I wanted to improve my skills. And so I started doing this. And as I kept going, I got past that first month. I was posting them on social media and was getting a good response. I'm like, I'll keep going. I keep doing this. And it became a habit. And what kind of evolved from that was I was initially just doing just kind of a lot of different random things too. Some of them weren't even related to being Native or Cherokee. It's just random stuff. But it kind of solidified into this Cherokee theme, I guess it's Cherokee world, so to speak, because a lot of the participation from the audience was like, well, what about this or what about that? Or can you do a piece about this or whatever? And it kind of started going down this route of a lot of Cherokee history and a lot of cultural items. And a lot of that is tied to, our sense of humor, just because, a lot of times humor is what gets us through some of these dark periods too and everything. So there's always been this sense of history and sense of humor here tied together. And I do draw from my daily experience because I do get to work with a lot of Cherokee elders and a lot of knowledge holders, a lot of artists. And so when you're around these kind of groups of people, there's a lot of joking, a lot of laughter, lots of teasing and all that. And so a lot of that does come through in my work because what I'm trying to do now with this daily sketch project is to kind of, in a certain sense, it is storytelling because it might not be like a book or words, so to speak, but just kind of these images of people that either I know or they're like people that I come across in the community. Sometimes the images are based on stories that I've heard or been told, and just interacting with all these people. So it does all come together. And so this project, the sketch project, it is informed by the community. So it's just kind of back and forth, and the humor is a big part of it. A lot of jokes and things like that kind of come through in some of the art, and sometimes it might be a visual joke, or sometimes it's just a straight up reference to something somebody said something funny or whatever, but Yeah, I do enjoy pulling that part into things because a lot of times, especially in mainstream media, we get portrayed as just these very serious and dour people a lot. And sometimes there's time to be serious, but a lot of times we're always laughing. I mean,
Absolutely.
You said that's your daily sketch project's been going on since 2012. When did this relationship with Marvel Comics develop?
it came about actually because of the social media project. There was a talent scout at Marvel who several years ago, they were trying to find some Native artists to do this. They wanted to start doing, for Native American Heritage Month in November, they wanted to start focusing on their Native characters that the company has, because they didn't have a great track record of good representation of Natives in their art and their stories. No one really has, at that level. And so they wanted to try to kind of rectify that. So they were trying to find these Native creatives out there to bring into the fold and to try to fix that and make these characters more relevant to Native people today. And so I have a friend out in California. She's done some comic book work. And she sent me a message on Instagram. She said these people from Marvel are trying to contact you. I was like, what? Yeah, because what happened before that, I got a message from someone, and it was from Marvel, but I thought this is not a real thing, so I didn't even answer it.
It's spam.
Yeah, essentially. And I'm like, okay, that's just kind of. And then so when she sent me that message, I went back and reread the thing and looked at it. I was like, I guess I should answer this, and so I did, and they said, well, we're doing this thing called Marvel Voices Heritage. And this heritage line is where they have been focusing a lot of their Native characters and artists and writers into this line. And so every November, essentially for the last couple of years or so, they've asked me to do some cover art for some of their comic. The first example is for that first issue of the Heritage series. They asked me to do a alternate cover. There's a thing in the comics world where they do multiple covers for each issue of a comic. So one issue might have 5 or 6 different covers on it. And so that is to sell more copies because a lot of the collectors like to collect every version of it. So they asked me to do a version of the character named Kushala, who is a Comanche character, and she eventually becomes the new Ghost Rider. So that's the backstory there, but they asked me to do this painting of her for the cover. And that did lead to other parts with them. So like I got to do like a Spider-Man. It was like Spider-Man's 60th anniversary, I think. They asked me to do a special painting for that.
I love that one, by the way, because my favorite superhero is Spider-Man.
Yeah, he's mine too.
Yeah.
And it was kind of a nice callback to when I was like 18 or 19. I submitted an art packet to Marvel to try to get in to do art, and I got rejected. And they sent a letter back saying, well, it's probably just a form letter, but it's like, yeah, thank you for your submission and all this. And but unfortunately, your art doesn't fit what we're looking for at this time, but keep working at it kind of thing. And so, I tried once and never thought about trying again. So, years later, I wasn't even expecting it. So they contacted me to come in and do this. So that, for me, that was kind of cool to be able to do that and to do a Spider-Man cover, which is, he was my favorite growing up, still is. So
yes.
that was pretty cool. So I got to do mainstream stuff with them and still kind of going back into that Native track they have. But even having said that too, like the latest, most recent one I did was for Ghost Rider. This Kushala character is in that issue, so they had me do a cover that features both Ghost Rider and Kushala, which again was kind of fun for me because I was a big Ghost Rider fan growing up. So actually getting to work on these characters that I grew up with has been pretty cool.
That is so awesome.
I've heard some artists talk about that, whether it's in the film industry or something, like working on a project that they've always kind of dreamed about. Is that kind of surreal to be putting pen to paper and being like, oh, this is for Marvel, this is for Spider-Man, this is what I grew up idolizing and looking up to?
Yeah, it is very surreal. For me, I had to take a step back when you're actually doing the work. And a good example is, they asked me to do a Venom cover, a painting. And the editor was like, well, we want a classic Venom image of him swinging through the city at night. And like, do you need reference art? I'm like, no, I know what Venom looks like. I didn't need. So it was kind of cool, but still being in that space of like, oh, I need to kind of, again, step back one step to make sure that I can get this done, where I'm not just sitting there kind of geeking out too much over what I'm working on, and getting to do this process of, when you're working with these companies, they ask you to do a lot of different versions. So you're doing a lot of sketches and you're going back and forth with the editor, and you're like, well, do this, change this, tweak that. And then when they settle on what they want, it's always great to get that stamp of approval and get to finish it out. And for me, one of my most favorite parts about it is, of course, doing the art. But then when you see your artwork with the title on it, that's always pretty cool, because their design team goes back and puts all the trademarks and everything on it, and you get a copy that's like, oh, this is pretty cool.
I know we already asked this, but your favorite superhero, who is it?
It's definitely Spider-Man.
Oh, good.
Yeah, I said I grew up reading his comics and watching the cartoons, and I was so excited when those old movies came out with Tobey Maguire. Those were great.
Oh my gosh, that's another thing. There's like this debate where who's your favorite Spider-Man? Tobey Maguire, what is that other
Andrew
guy's
Garfield.
name? Andrew Garfield and Tom Holland. Which one?
It's Tobey Maguire. I mean, I like Tom Holland too, but just because at the time when they came out, Tobey Maguire was, the first one I'd seen that was like really good. Because as a kid, there were some that came out that I don't remember who played them at that point, but they were these cheap TV movies where they were wearing bad spandex and stuff. It just didn't look great,
Yeah.
So I think that for me, he's the favorite one.
Yeah, same. What about you, Colton?
I feel like Andrew Garfield is the unpopular answer of those three.
Yeah.
But I feel like I was too young to appreciate the Tobey Maguire one, and I was probably too old to appreciate the Tom Holland one in my brain, or I wasn't lining up the movie theater. So Andrew Garfield in my brain always is Peter Parker, but that's not a super popular opinion.
No, it's not.
What
What about you, Producer Brian?
Oh yeah, Producer Brian.
Okay.
On the mic.
No offense to Roy or Kenley, and I hate to agree with Colton, but Andrew Garfield all the way.
Really? Well, you know what's crazy is I'm like between you guys is age, and that was my first movie. I got it for Christmas one year, Spider-Man, the very first one with Tobey Maguire, and I just love. Ever since then, I loved Spider-Man. It was my favorite.
That Nickelback soundtrack really added to it too. You don't get those Nickelback soundtracks anymore.
It's very early 2000s
Yeah.
vibes.
Yeah. So which superhero is your favorite? But if you could snap your fingers and have one superpower right now, what would it be?
That's a really good question, because there's so many. But I think the older I get, when you start having aches and pains, like the healing factor of Wolverine.
That's so good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's more utilitarian than anything.
Yeah, it's almost kind of selfish. I'm like, I just want to feel better.
Oh my gosh. I think I would be able to move things. What is it? Telekinesis? Is that what it is?
With your brain?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Move things with my brain. I think that'd be so fun.
Producer Brian, I'm going to defer to you.
How did I get involved in that? Kenley and I, we work in social media all day long. So maybe just slowing down time so you can do more.
That is such a good one.
Is that a sad millennial answer?
Yes.
I was saying I have a heck of a commute, as you also drive all over the reservation, so I was saying teleportation was mine. I just wish I could snap my finger and be in another place,
Those are good.
Save on gas at least.
Y'all are like really good, like good ones. Mine's like, I can move things with my mind. Practical things, as y'all say. Speaking of Marvel, and I don't know, you may not be able to even say, but are you working on anything currently, or?
Not at the moment. The way they do it, they'll just kind of contact you like, hey, can you do this? And so you never know when it's going to come down the pike or not.
Very superhero of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll put the bat signal up, and you better respond.
Yeah, you better respond.
Right.
Yeah. The thing I'm working on at the moment, though, is I got a commission from the Crystal Bridges Museum of Art. It's for 3 pieces. I finished one last year, and that's on display currently at the museum for their exhibit called American Sunrise. But I have 2 more I need to finish. So right now my focus is on getting those, because they're large-scale paintings, at 6 feet tall.
Wow. Wow.
So that's taking a lot of my time. So hopefully I can get those done fairly soon. So
Speaking of your work in museums, had some free time in D.C. and was wandering around the Museum of the American Indian, and I stumbled upon your Sequoia with a mask on was one of the featured pieces of art there. Can you kind of talk about how you can kind of use your art for very timely messaging like that as well?
yeah, so that piece was made during the shutdown of COVID, the pandemic, and at the time everyone was talking about social distancing and washing your hands and all this. So this was just a piece of Sequoia wearing a mask, and he was telling you to wash your hands essentially. And that was the idea. It was like, well, take care of everyone. I posted this image on my daily sketch thing on social media, and one of my friends, Lee Francis, who he's Pueblo, but he runs the Digipop X Comic Con, the Native Comic Con, and he operates that Native Realities publishing company in the Red Planet Comics bookstore. And so he had seen this piece. He's like, hey, I got this idea. Can we use this as a poster? And I was like, yeah, sure, that is fine with me. I didn't realize a poster was going to be at the Smithsonian Museum there in D.C. So I think that's actually probably one of the pieces I've done that's probably been seen the most, because it's in this public space and people go by it all the time. So, telling how many people have seen that particular image.
Yeah, and my favorite part of that story is I was excited to see your work in D.C., and I texted a photo of that poster to Steph Reamer, a mutual friend, and she goes, yeah, I've got the original. And I was like, of course you do, Steph. You've got all the cool stuff. Yeah.
So can we talk a little bit about the Cherokee Nation's Artist Recovery Act and how, the artist community is so big, and I'm sure you have friends, that might have used the Artist Recovery Act. How is that helping, or how have you seen that help Cherokee artists?
It's been a tremendous help, especially with the COVID shutdown. I think that's kind of the origins of it, to help make sure that artists could still work and get paid for their work and that kind of thing. So it's been nice seeing artists have the ability to have their work purchased by Cherokee Nation and put in all these facilities, because there's a big boom in construction now too, and so all these buildings need to be decorated with some nice Cherokee art, and so a lot of these artists get to see their work in public. A lot of times as an artist, you might be making a piece, you don't know where it's going to end up. It might just end up in your closet, or it might end up in some museum. You never know. And so having this opportunity again for the tribe to invest in artists and have their work out there in the public is great. The other aspect I've seen a lot of artists take advantage of is, doing the classes, which is a big part of, just in general, Cherokees are big on education. So being able to share these artistic skills with the community is a great thing, because we always have to, make sure we're training the next generation to pick up some of these skills and ideas. And especially a lot of the traditional arts, we need more people out there teaching that kind of thing, the basket making, the pottery, the weapons and all this stuff. We need a lot more people making these kind of things.
One thing that my dad always tells me is that if you're an artist, you can do a lot of other things, like art-wise. Do you have other hidden talents other than sketches?
Not really. I mean, that's kind of my main thing is painting and drawing. I've tried my hand a little bit at sculpture. I'm still kind of interested in doing some of that, more like wood carving and things. I used to do that when I was much younger. It's been a while since I've done that. I've also wanted to try my hand at pottery. I'm friends with Jane Austin, and I admire the work that she does quite a lot. And I've tried pottery years ago, and it wasn't my forte. I remember I tried to fire the piece and it blew up, and so, but I would like to maybe try to get back into that again someday.
Oh, I'm sure it's amazing. I bet one day we'll be buying some Roy Boney pottery coming up soon.
So we've talked about all the accomplishments. Is there something that you're looking forward to or hoping that will come down the pike pretty soon? And, maybe anything that is still on the list that you need to check off?
Yeah, I was working for the Cherokee Language Department for quite some time. I think about almost 17 years. And then just recently I changed jobs to work for Cherokee Film. And it seems like kind of a huge difference there, but it's really not. When I first was hired by Cherokee Nation, my task was to create Cherokee language animations for the immersion school. And I ended up doing some of that and then helping make some of the curriculum, doing illustrated books and curriculum and stuff like that up at the school. So fast forward now at Cherokee Film, I kind of have come full circle. I'm doing working on animation projects again in Cherokee Language. We have a project with the Cherokee Language Department to do some more curriculum animations, and we're doing the Let's Talk Cherokee segments for OCO TV. So getting to do all these animation projects is really what I've always wanted to do. So I'm back to doing that. But I'm looking forward to creating more original content in Cherokee Language, whether that's animated, live action, whatever it is. I want to kind of move in that direction to create films and animations and video games and interactive media, more of that in Cherokee Language. And so it looks like we are going to be moving that direction. We got some ideas on the table that I can't quite talk about yet, but I'm pretty excited about seeing how this is going to come out.
A video game with Roy Boney? That is going to be amazing.
It's always nice to hear somebody that's on the cutting edge of everything, and I feel like most of the stuff you do ends up on the cutting edge of everything.
Roy, I'm sure a lot of people listening follow you on social media, but if someone just happened to find this episode and they don't know you, where can they find you on social media?
I'm on Instagram at Roy Boney is my handle. You can find me on Facebook. I have not moved to Blue Sky yet, but that will be coming. And I have a website at royboneyart.com. Those are the main places that you can find me. So yeah, Instagram is probably the easiest way to contact me, or Facebook. A lot of the daily sketches usually go on Facebook first.
And good luck to all of you out there calling dibs.
Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us, Roy. We're honored to have you as our first guest, and we think and admire all the work that you're doing for the tribe and for the language and Cherokee culture as a whole. And I know you're too humble to accept that, but we really think people like you are the reason we started the show and the reason that Cherokee culture is still so vibrant as it is. And if the world was a little bit more like Roy Boney, I think we'd be in a better place.
Appreciate that.
Thank you, Roy.
Siyo from the Res was recorded at the W.W. Keeler Tribal Complex in Tahlequah on the Cherokee Nation Reservation.
This episode was hosted by Kinley Keys and Colton Brandstetter.
Our producer is Brian Dugan.
Our podcast art was designed by Justine Eden.
This episode was edited by Samantha Robinson and Colton Brandstetter.
Soundtrack by Chuge Mackey.
If you're enjoying the show, please subscribe and leave a review. It'll help more people find us. Please share this episode with your family and friends, especially some of our elders who may not be on social media or listen to podcasts.
And don't forget to follow Cherokee Nation on social media for podcast updates and behind-the-scenes content. Wado for listening. We are so excited to finally launch this new podcast from the Cherokee Nation. If you aren't a regular listener already, be sure to check out Dennis Sixkiller's Cherokee Voices, Cherokee Sounds, which paved the way for a show like this. And be sure to check back for future episodes of Siyo from the Res everywhere you listen to podcasts, because we have some exciting guests lined up. Until next time, stay connected, watch out for one another, and Siyo from the Res. Slowly when the darling got to Yohi, OGC Donela, COJ Doha.